National Security Minister Kandapa has admitted it could be possible former members of vigilante groups may have been recruited as national security operatives. Mr. Dapa, however, fought off suggestions operatives deployed during last month's Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election were responsible for the gunshot wounds sustained by some members of the public near the home of the NDC candidate. The minister appeared before the Emil Short Commission, tasked to, among others, probe violence that erupted during the by-election. JoyNews' Joseph A.W.W was at day one of the hearing and has come through with this report.
We will count on the cooperation of all and sundry for the ultimate objective of investigating the violence and related incidents surrounding the conduct of the elections on the 31st January 2019.
That was how the Commission's hearing commenced. Justice Short appealing for support. Interior Minister Ambrose Derry was the first to testify. He distanced his ministry from the masked men seen during the by-election.
As normally is the case, when I get any report, the reports are either simply oral through the phone, sometimes photographs and videos. So when I got the video, I forwarded it to the IGP and he says, these are not part of my men.
He further stated that police branded vehicle used by the masked men were not that of the police service.
He denied that that was not a police vehicle in use by the police. And he in fact told me, Minister, our vehicles have GP. What is the GP number? It is not our vehicle.
He wrapped up his testimony by assuring the Commission his ministry was bent on dealing with political party vigilantism, which many analysts have blamed as the root cause of the violence that marred the election.
The prosecutor or lawyer, as you are saying, sentence the person, and all those are illegal and unacceptable, and they must be condemned. And we intend.
His colleague Albert Kandapa, who heads the National Security Ministry, was forthcoming with information about the masked men who were deployed on the day. He first indicated he ignored advice against testifying publicly and then shared some details on why the SWAT team was deployed.
It had been approved. The operation itself had been approved by the Director of Operations at the National Security Secretariat. I'm told, Honorable Chairman, that for this operation, they acted based on intelligence report that there were weapons in a building within the constituency where the by-election was to take place.
He shared with the Commission the briefing he had received from his men who caused the assault of Nigo Prampram MP Sam George.
A member of the SWAT team reminded him that, Honorable, you are causing fear and panic. It is not true that anybody died at that incident. We were there. You are causing fear and panic, and you should stop that. Apparently, the Honorable Member of Parliament did not take kindly to that, went towards where the boy was standing, the operative was standing. The operative also bet him halfway, and I understand he was hit.
He was emphatic the operatives could not have been responsible for those who got injured on the day.
Later, they also said they heard gunshots coming from within the compound of the house. Our boys then gave some 6 warning shots, which they tell me did not hit anybody. But obviously, I await the end of the investigations to find out exactly what happened and how many shots they fired and whether it did hit somebody.
Minister of State in charge of National Security, Brian Achampo, who was the last to testify, told the Commission the officer alleged to have assaulted the MP has since been excused from operational duties, with the security hierarchy availing him for possible interrogation by the police.
Let me also put on record, Madam, that I have instructed the Director of Operations to ensure that all the people, especially the one that was seen on video, to have reacted to the Honorable Member of Parliament to be removed from operation until such a and made available to the police. And yesterday, I, in my office, made sure that the commander of the unit, the CID PDP, came and took his statement. And I believe that if they deem it necessary to act on anything in the statement, including arresting the person that reacted to the minister, I believe the police will do so when they conclude their investigation. But that officer is available at any time to the police for questioning.
The Inspector General of Police and Director of Operations for Greater Accra are expected to testify before the committee on Friday.
Now, let's now listen to the National Security Minister Kandapa admitting that it is possible former members of the vigilante groups may have found their way into the national security apparatus.
There is this general belief within the country, and that actually forms the conversation going around, that this group you describe as security operatives are actually part of a vigilante grouping within the new patriotic party. What do you have to say about that?
Definitely not true. Definitely not true. If the suggestion is that included in the operatives are people who normally belong to a particular vigilante group, no, that would be surprising. If some of them in the past had participated in some vigilante groups, that probably could be possible. But, Mr. Chairman, it is important to know about these political vigilante groups that we have in the country. There isn't one political vigilante group that belongs to a political party. The CDD has just come up with a study which establishes that these vigilante groups are owned by some individuals.
Members of the Short Commission had cause during Thursday's hearing to question the way and manner the security operatives deployed on the day of the Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election went about their operation and the quality of intelligence. We will be analyzing some of the responses given by the National Security Minister Kandapa. Before then, though, let's watch one such encounter.
You talked about how the national security people found themselves in that area on that day, and you indicated that they acted on an intelligence report and that it was when they got there that they found it was the home or house of the NDC candidate. Am I correct?
Not house in terms of residence. He doesn't live there, but he was using, or he has been using that building, I think, as a warehouse. But whatever they use that he normally uses it for, that day, it was more or less one of the operational headquarters of the NDC candidate.
You said it was when they arrived that they discovered this. You mean the intelligence did not disclose who owned the place?
They found out when they got there that the place was owned by the NDC candidate. The intelligence must have told them earlier before going there, or they must have found it when they got there. I need to get an answer to this specific question from the commander.
I would appreciate hearing the answer myself, because I cannot believe that an intelligence report that guns or at least arms and ammunition, are being stockpiled in a particular locality, and no effort would be made to find who owned it before operatives moved in there?
It depends upon when they got the intelligence and the time available to them to have gone to do an earlier surveillance. It's not something surprising to me that they go there only to find that it belonged to a particular person. But again, it's important we know the exact position. And this, I believe, we will get it from the commander himself. At what point in time did he get the intelligence?
Now we're going to stay with the Commission's work for a while, and security analyst Colonel retired Festus Obuaje joins us now with his thoughts on day one of the proceedings. Good evening to you, and thank you for your time. Now, what are your observations from the Commission's first day sitting?
Hello.
Yes, Colonel Obuaje, I'd want to know what your observations are from the Commission's first day sitting.
Well, thanks a lot for having me on your show. Well, I think it's the first day, and there are many more witnesses to appear before the Commission. Is he talking to me or you're talking to me?
Colonel Festus Obuaje, you're speaking with Israel I on JoyNews Prime.
I've switched off my TV, so let me come in again.
All right, so let me ask you again. I'm asking, what are your observations from the Commission's first day sitting?
That's why I was trying to suggest that it's very early days yet, and there are many more witnesses, potential witnesses, that would have to appear before the Commission. My broad observations are that there have been some degree of contradiction among the statements delivered by the three ministers. And I find in the statements, again, some amount of inconsistencies and potential inaccuracies.
Could you point us to some of these inconsistencies and potential inaccuracies?
Well, I think the first contradiction relates to the command and control of the operation, precisely whether it was a police-led operation or whether it was led by a police officer, not under the chain of command of the IGP directly, but under the chain of command of the Director of Operations. I find that a bit difficult because the Minister for Interior was categorical that the operations were not conducted by the police, including the fact that, or according to him, that the vehicles were not police vehicles. But this was contradicted by the Minister of State, who said that, the vehicles and 25 out of the 60 men and possibly women who were involved in the operation came from the Ghana National Police Service on assignment to the National Security Council or the National Security Ministry.
Now, in addition to these contradictions that you have raised, the minister also suggested there could be former vigilante group members recruited as national security operatives. To what extent does this affect public confidence in state security?
Well, I think that would be a very dramatic situation if that is true. But it wouldn't be surprising. And it speaks to the questions around vetting of the men and women that will recruit into our national security services. Given the tensions around political vigilantism, it is arguable that it will not be in the national interest for persons who are members of vigilante groups associated, directly controlled by the political parties or as and when necessary used by them to be members of the national security architecture. That will not be in the national interest. But given that he himself admitted that he needs to go and check the facts, and we need to actually go to the bottom of this, especially when persons who are responsible for recruiting and equipping and training and directing operations conducted under the National Security Ministry appear before the board. We need to get to the bottom of that.
All right. Now, there was also an indication from the minister that the intelligence-led operations team got to the venue before they realized it was actually the residence or a property owned by the NDC parliamentary candidate. Now, one of the members of the commission thought it was quite odd that that would happen. Do you also find that intelligence faulty or that reasoning faulty?
Well, given the depth and scope of the evidence that was brought before the commission, we need to nuance the questions and the answers. For instance, we need to find out whether this was a set-piece operation based on intelligence of a medium to short-term nature. So we're talking about a few days, during which it should have been a matter of procedure for the national security apparatus to do further reconnaissance of the scene, and in order to be able to plan into the last detail how the operations were going to be conducted. On the contrary, it could also be a snap operation that was based on intelligence of a very, very short-term nature, in which case they might have concluded that time would be lost if the operation was not mounted immediately. Now, the commissioner, I think, will need to find out where the line is drawn as to how old the intelligence was. In fact, the source of the intelligence, the nature of the intelligence, the credibility of the source, and of the accuracy of the intelligence itself. But on the surface of it, there is a lot to wonder about how the operation itself was conducted in terms of the formations that were adopted, in terms of whether fire control orders were issued, in terms of the drills that the men and women within the team of 60 conducted the operation. For instance, the after-action procedures regarding arrest and wounded persons. And I think on the surface of the video evidence that we have, it doesn't look like the 60-man group were actually responsible for attending to the wounded, aside of the arrest of the 6 persons or probably the 9 that 1 or 2 of the ministers attested to. So let us allow the commission a bit more time to try and resolve some of these gray areas around the information that is being provided or that has been provided by the witnesses so far.
All right. Thank you very much, Colonel retired Festus Abuaji, and he's a security analyst sharing with us his observations from the short commission's first day of sitting. Now, one other incident that came up, or one other encounter that came up, was that National Security Minister Kan Dapa talking about what the operatives did when they got to the scene or the home or the property owned by the NDC candidate in the Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election. He talked about the fact that they fired 6 warning shots. Let's hear him.
Later, they also said they heard gunshots coming from within the compound of the house. Our boys then gave some 6 warning shots, which they tell me did not hit anybody. But obviously, I await the end of the investigations to find out exactly what happened and how many shots they fired and whether it did hit somebody.
JoyNews video footage obtained by JoyNews suggests that the shots that were fired on the day were obviously more than 6. Let's watch this video.
Charlie, right now they point the gun, come here.
Well, it's early days yet, and the Commission's work just begun. And so we will await the conclusions of the Commission's, the short Commission's work.